How will the next Switch, in Doug Bowser's words, surprise and delight? What crazy new features will Nintendo come up with, besides graphical and processing upgrades? In this video, we're going to be deep diving into all sorts of weird and wacky technologies, looking at Nintendo's patents and their history, and the potential of tech in the current day to see how the next Nintendo console could innovate in ways few people currently expect. Let's go with our number one. Hey Switch, play Zelda. Hey, the Nintendo Switch system, play The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild game. Yes, number one is voice control. After a decade of Siri and Alexa yakking it up in consumers' homes, it definitely makes sense that Nintendo would seek to enter the voice space. Moreover, this is prime Nintendo territory. They have had microphones built into consoles for decades at this point, and actually the Nintendo Switch was the exception to the rule. Many games, including big hitters like Nintendogs, have had voice functionality, and with better technology you could absolutely imagine Nintendo seeking to incorporate this into newer versions of games. If nothing else, it strikes me as an amazing offer for disabled players, as more of its long-term customers curse that their button-mashing 90s heyday has left them with arthritic thumbs. The ability to shout at Link to draw a bow could be very welcome, and, crucially, quite immersive. I'm not sure they're ready yet to incorporate the huge amount of voice acting necessary to make Animal Crossing a world where you can interact with the characters through voice, where you can truly strike up conversations with your villagers, but I'm sure eventually that will be a goal. Would a built-in microphone supersede the hated voice app and allow discussion within Splatoon games? Yeah, maybe not. But I think the chances are at least medium at this point that voice will make a return to the Nintendo Switch ecosystem before 2025. Indeed, there was a Taiwanese article in 2020 from someone with supposed sources identifying improved interactivity as a goal for the new console, and this is certainly one way to achieve it. So while Nintendo may well think of more exciting game-related applications than just a new way of loading games, I for one would enjoy the opportunity to say, hey, the Nintendo Switch OLED model, play the Super Mario Bros. 3D World plus Bowser's Fury game. Number 2. This is a genuine Nintendo patent from before the Switch area, and I could see it making a surprise comeback. The scroll wheel shoulder button. As we all know, Nintendo loves to innovate with their controllers. They brought into the mainstream gaming space D-pads, shoulder buttons, analog sticks, touchscreen and motion controls. This is hardly new technology, but that's what Nintendo loves, and that extra flourish of the ease to flip through menus or adjust camera setting could be a lovely little distinctive flourish that actually does really enrich the gameplay experience. In Splatoon, perhaps you could toggle up and down the amount of paint you're using in one attack. In Zelda, imagine flipping between arrows on the fly with a quick flick. However, Nintendo doesn't usually initiate these changes purely for their core games, but for new opportunities the technology presents. For anyone who grew up using a computer scroll mouse, scroll wheels are intuitive, but there is a whole generation for whom touchscreen is perfectly fine and intuitive, and I'm not sure that a scroll wheel adds to the same kind of innovative potential that motion controls, touchscreens, or voice added in previous Nintendo hardware. Not to say they wouldn't ever put out a dorky accessory. They sold 154 million copies of a console which had a stylus, but I think it's actually the casual audience where this could fall down. Also, of course, they had this patent in 2015, and yet didn't incorporate it into the Nintendo Switch in 2017. I don't think this makes a big difference to the chances of being seen in the future. After the Wii U, they really needed to follow the keep it simple stupid principle and not get too crazy, but I could see this being a feature they dust off. All things considered, I'm putting this in the very low chances of happening, but that's not a zero chance. It just means I only expect about 1 in 10 of these very low forecasts to come off, and who knows, maybe this could be the 1 in 10. And before we move on to number 3, don't forget to scroll and hit the like button to signal boost the channel to other Nintendo forecasters. The more we grow the community, the more we'll be able to calibrate our forecasts and perhaps even get ahead of the big end now and then. Number 3. Projecting to the screen. Look, the Wii U was a flop, but it was in many ways one expression of a design philosophy that Nintendo has spent decades embodying and that has generally served them well. So I don't think we should rule out the Wii U's most iconic feature coming back, albeit in a slightly unusual way. What if the new Nintendo Switch dock was simply a receiver stick that you could plug into any television you like and broadcast to it? This would make the whole system more mobile than ever before and truly encourage people to game on the go. But, critically, it would mean that you could hold a console and screen in your hand while it is broadcast to the screen. It would open up, you know it, double screen functionality. Wii U options available on games like Wind Waker and Splatoon and Breath of the Wild even could make a return to the Switch, if only for people playing in TV mode. We could see a return of games like Nintendo Land and Sing Party. Nintendo aren't shy of doing games which only work on one mode. They did this with Labo, they did this with Mario Party. And certainly if there's new hardware, they might be more keen to have system-specific features. To me, it's the technical barriers that concern me most. We know that managing heat is a big concern for the current Switch, and actually it seems that if Nintendo allowed the Switch to be overclocked, then performance could be improved. However, this would come at the risk of increased heat. The only benefit I can currently see of the clunky dock model as it stands is that it's basically impossible to impede at least some airflow all around the system, which probably helps keep it relatively cool as it's being used to generate more power. To output to a 4K television, you would need to ensure it wouldn't get too hot in your hands. The potential benefits for Nintendo are amazing though. Imagine if your receiver stick clipped to the back of the base console, meaning that you could go around to someone's rooftop party and clip it into their television. The Switch segregated TV mode and handheld mode and made handheld mode the mobile one, but making TV mode another mobile way to play seems like a dream Nintendo has had ever since they first put that dubious handle on the GameCube, and perhaps it could be about to come true. I really think something like this is in Nintendo's future, but whether it's in the cards for this next iteration, I'm not sure. Therefore I'm putting this at a 30% chance, but I would really appreciate input in the comment section to help me calibrate this and all of these forecasts. However, screen broadcasting doesn't only have to work from the Switch to the docking stick. Number 4 is turning this idea on its head, using cloud to the edge to project from the dock. Cloud gaming has already become a small but significant part of the Switch ecosystem, with games like Kingdom Hearts only available via streaming. Cloud to the edge is the idea to take the processing right to the edge of the network which needs to access it. In this case, what if the next Switch had a more powerful dock that could store games and act as its own cloud server, streaming not just to the new Switch, but also maybe to existing models? Think about it. As the Nintendo Switch reaches saturation point, many of Nintendo's customers have at least one Switch at home. Buying a second Switch to play different games is a jump in the dark for consumers. But if Nintendo can offer a system that upgrades those consumers' existing systems, it becomes a much tastier and more marketable prospect. All they would need to say is that the new system can stream games to the OG Switch, Switch Lite, and Switch OLED if they're within the same internet connection. It would never be quite as good as an offer having a new full system that can play games on the go, but it would allow players to remain within the Switch gaming ecosystem without the need to make that day one upgrade. Games would download onto your Super Dock and then be pushed out in great resolution to your existing systems. In fact, it may be possible to have your existing games plug in and stream at the best possible resolution to your older Switch systems. Technically, this could be difficult, and whether or not a bulky dock is the way Nintendo wants to go, I'm not quite sure. It would definitely have short-term benefit to them, but it might hurt uptake of the new system in the medium term. Having said all this, while I definitely think that Nintendo will experiment with cloud technology more in the years to come, I do think I'm putting this possibility as very low. Number 5. Eye tracking. Nintendo already did a lot of work on this technology for the 3DS in order to reduce motion sickness and ensure the glasses-free 3D worked as expected. They didn't need it for Switch because the whole point of the hybrid was that it needed to be playable on a regular television, but I don't think that rules out eye tracking technology making a comeback. I was curious when investigating this to see that a company called Tobii count Ubisoft and Square Enix as two partners who are looking to use their eye tracking technology in games, and I have to say that neither company strikes me as anywhere near as game for an experiment as the Big N. Now, clearly a major use of eye tracking would be in an extended reality context, VR or AR, but it's Nintendo, so just imagine some more accessible uses. What about playing peekaboo with your Nintendog? What about in Animal Crossing being able to catch your villager's eye when you look at them? What about a Zelda puzzle that helps nudge you if you're looking in the complete wrong spot? Tobii's examples also include HUDs that disappear when you're not using them, and dynamic lighting depending on where you're focusing your eyesight. The major issue to me is logistical. If the Switch docks, you could incorporate this into the main system, which means that it would be in the Joy-Con. But if this is the case, the Joy-Con will be moving constantly, which is going to require some pretty smart sensors. Possible, but expensive. Would Nintendo be willing to bump up the price of a controller with some new gimmick? Well, they kind of did that before with the IR cameras on the Nintendo Switch. Perhaps if there was some other use for it. And of course, where eye tracking really comes into its own is virtual reality. That's where the next in this series will be exploring the why and how, more than a quarter century since the Virtual Boy, Nintendo could be returning to the VR space in a major way. Subscribe and like, because this deep dive series is only just getting started.